Last year was the first year I did the South Beach Jazz Festival. We had about 100 musicians performing during that week. The goal, of course, was to showcase the abilities of musicians with disabilities. So at least one person performing in each group was a person with a disability. What we really wanted to do is have a palpable feeling in the city that there was jazz all around you. Our headliners were Diane Shore.
I'm taking a Greyhound on the Hudson River line.
We brought Diane's from Los Angeles.
I'm in a New York state of mind.
Raul Midan.
Sunshine, when you're with me, I can fly.
I called the mayor's office and I said, there's a technology called APS, or audible pedestrian signals.
5, 4, 3.
For people who are blind and deafblind. Have you ever considered installing them in the city?
2, 1.
We planned all these events, and it culminated in the ribbon cutting ceremony where we had the first audible pedestrian signal installed.
Long lane, walk sign. Long lane, walk sign.
That brings me back again to my organization, Access Now, which is an ADA advocacy organization. We try to encourage businesses, entities, and individuals to become compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, where they are not doing so. I started an affiliate of the American Council of the Blind here called the Miami Beach Council of the Blind, and have organized a wonderful group of very active individuals who are blind and interested in really being involved in their community. They're not shrinking violets. They really go for it. We're always looking for volunteers, and we work with many different volunteer organizations, and there's a place for everyone. It's easy, and it really makes a huge difference. I really learned everything by reaching out and kind of screaming out. It was a very organic process, and it made me become an advocate. I can tell you where to begin, and I can be a live person who will really stand by you and walk with you in that journey. The first thing I would say is call me. Call me.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson.
And I'm Pete Lane. Our guest today is David New. David is an activist, advocate, and promoter of assistive technology. David is also the president of 2 humanitarian organizations in Miami Beach, Florida. Those organizations are Power Access and Access Now. David has a world of talents, which we hope to explore in depth today. Good morning, David. Welcome to Blind Abilities. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Thanks for coming on board.
Nice to have you, David.
David, let's start at the beginning. Tell us about your history, a little bit about your childhood, how you became blind, and bring us forward to how you got to Miami Beach and became a very strong advocate for the blind and visually impaired.
Well, I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in, I'm not going to say what year. It was a very normal childhood. I had 2 sisters and grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I went to a private high school. I was offered some opportunities there that I may not have received in a public school system, so I was grateful for that experience. I went to college and was a visual artist major. I studied graphic design. I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I felt that it wasn't exactly the right program for me. So I actually left that school and I went to FIT in New York, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology. I was living in Philadelphia and I was commuting to New York on a weekly basis. And although I did like what I was studying, it just seemed a bit overwhelming. So I moved on to a school in Philadelphia called University of the Arts. There I studied industrial design. That was very exciting to me because it was about creating product that people people would be using the design of those products and how they interact with people. And I just found it to be very intriguing. However, that was not long-lived either. I left school. I went to work for my dad. He's a furniture manufacturer, and I headed up his graphic design department. But I still was curious to learn more, and I went back to Temple University for advertising. I studied glass blowing. I've always enjoyed working with glass, which I do to this day. But after Temple University and working for my dad, I decided to move away from Philadelphia. I came down to Miami, ended up going to school at Florida Atlantic University, left there, went back to work for my dad. I moved around quite a bit. This was in my 20s. However, when I lost my sight at the age of 30 from a degenerative eye disease, I actually went back to school, Florida Atlantic University, and took some law classes. I had learned from my experience as a person who is blind that there are a lot of ways that people can and will take advantage of you. I had been taken advantage of even early on in my blindness, and I wanted to be my own advocate, and I wanted to find ways to protect myself and not feel marginalized. I believe I accomplished that. I did not pursue a law degree, but it did help me in my everyday, and it's still does.
Glass blowing, you still do that?
Well, I don't do glass blowing anymore. Right now, I have a line of laser-etched glass sculptures that I have designed. The process is interesting. You know, I bought my condo here in Miami Beach about 5 years ago, and in renovating the unit, I hired a lot of different contractors, and one of them was a glass contractor to do mirrors and that sort of thing. And he had told me about a process that was new. It's a laser etch process where they take an image and using that image through your computer, connecting it to this huge laser bed scanner, you can engrave these images into the glass. So there's nothing tactile about it. If you're blind, you can't see it. You can feel the glass. It's flat. I use a Starfire glass. It's very crystalline. It's very clear. And within the glass, depending on the detail of the image that you're transferring, you can see layers of detail which give it sort of a holographic effect, especially when I put it in a polished stainless steel base with an LED inside, so it illuminates it from underneath. The pieces are about 35 inches high by 35 inches wide. The glass is 3/4 inches thick, and the base is about 11 inches deep by about 40 inches wide.
If someone wanted to see these, where would they go for that?
Okay, well, my website for that is rdavidnew.com. It's the letter RDAVIDNEW.com. And that's my name. Remember my name, you got it. So yeah, the images are there. I also designed a line of bulletproof clothing. I was listening to the news and hearing about all these shootings and at the elementary schools and the schools everywhere. It really weighed on me heavily. Then I went to some resources for Kevlar and police garb and so on. And I found material that I could use to design some clothing. Largely, it's conceptual. All the pieces have components of Kevlar on them. Some of them are just for a visual effect. Others are fully bulletproof, like I have a messenger bag that's completely lined with Kevlar. On the outside, it's a silver diamond plate vinyl, which is tactile. You can feel the texture. And on the inside, it's fully lined with Kevlar.
You just wanted to get on NSA's short list, right?
Right. I don't think I rang any of their bells. I hope not. I've also designed stainless steel wraparound glasses, which are very futuristic. They're mirrored. It's a very polished mirror finish stainless steel. So when people look at me, they think, it's a mirrored glass. But in fact, it's a solid stainless steel. And until they come up to me and I explain what it is, they don't really understand. And I offer them to try them on. They put them on, and no sighted person could see through them.
Of course not, other than Superman.
Right. That was something I added to that line of bulletproof clothing. And I also have incorporated my LED laser etched glass into the clothing line, and I created a line of glass belt buckles. They're also laser etched with LEDs in them. I don't have the resources to mass produce any kind of bulletproof clothing. It's very expensive. Kevlar is like $150 for a square foot or something like that.
So David, wow. My goodness. What types of tools are you using to do these designs? Like, for instance, the laser edging. How do you design those statues and belt buckles?
I lost my sight when I was 30, so I have a strong visual memory. I decided to use images that I was familiar with. So I have 3 different series of subject matter. The first one is I took a $2 bill. Although $2 bills aren't all over the place, they're pretty ubiquitous and you can go to the bank and get one if you want. But I just thought it was unique. We enlarged it maybe 5 times into the glass, and it was a perfect image of that $2 bill, including the treasurer's signature and the serial number. And so it's like included with the glass sculpture, the actual original $2 bill that we scanned, so you know that it's one of a kind. You can't fake it. I put them in a stainless steel briefcase with my logo on the outside of it. It's been described as very Miami Vice. The next series was celebrity portraits, and then the third series was iconic architecture. So I know what those images look like. I described exactly the image that I had in my head and that I remembered and wanted to see. And then I had my people describe to me what came closest to it. So although I myself didn't by hand etch it into the glass, I conceived the whole sculptural process. That's about when I moved to Miami Beach, and the first thing I realized was it's very accessible here. Everything's very flat. The streets are laid out in a grid pattern, and it's not a big area. It's like 7 square miles. My only problem was that I couldn't cross the street. People drive crazy around here, and there were big intersections which sighted people don't even want to cross. I called the mayor's office and I said, there's a technology called APS, or audible pedestrian signal.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
For people who are blind and deafblind, have you ever considered installing them in the city? They told me, well, you know what? You can come to our committee called the Disability Access Committee and you can talk to them about it. So I did. I started attending the meetings. I told them about the technology. They said, well, we have a seat available on our committee. Would you like to become a member? So I thought, well, if this could further my mission of having these APS installed, that I should go for it. And I found a commissioner to sponsor me, and I got on the committee. I was on the committee for a couple of years, and then eventually there was an opening for the chair of the committee and they elected me chair. And then I finally had some leverage, so I met with the mayor and I said, okay, what do you think about these audible signals now? And she said, well, why didn't you do something to bring attention to your committee? I thought about it for a minute and I said, well, how about we have a Disability Awareness Day? And she said, that's great. I'll get behind that and I'll support you on that. We planned all these events, Technology and Resource Expo, and taping of a live TV show called Cooking Without Looking for blind people and with blind people. We did fundraiser cocktail party and all kinds of events. And it culminated in the ribbon cutting ceremony right here on Lincoln Road and Washington Avenue, where we had the first audible pedestrian signal installed. So the event was the impetus for the installation of the pilot program, which actually got started on that first Disability Awareness Day. I was the chair of the committee for 6 years, and then I termed out, so I could no longer be the chair.
Term limits even there.
Yeah. And you know what? It was fine because I developed a relationship with the city government and the mayor and commissioners and the different departments of the city, and I learned a lot about how a city works. At that point, I had started my own nonprofit organization called Power Access, which was the next iteration of the Disability Awareness Day, and I called it Ability Explosion, which was, a name that we came up with as a group because we wanted to showcase the abilities of people with disabilities in all kinds of different ways. We put on dozens of different events, from wheelchair basketball to disability simulations with the mayor and commissioners at City Hall. We did children's programs at the convention center and dining in the dark citywide. We had music symposiums and comedy festivals, 5K runs, and it's a very long list of events. And it was really an ability explosion. It was very exciting and it was completely usurped. It took all year to create these events and produce them all in 1 week in October. But, I really wanted to focus on something that would be, instead of doing many different events, 1 or 2 events that would really bring people together. So last year was the first year that I did the South Beach Jazz Festival. We had about 100 musicians performing during that week.
100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they performed at venues all over the city, at theaters, on live stages outdoors. And the goal, of course, was to showcase the abilities of musicians with disabilities. So at least one person performing in each group was a person with a disability. What we really wanted to do is have a palpable feeling in the city that there was jazz all around you. We wanted jazz in the streets. We wanted jazz performances in theaters. Our headliners were Diane Shore, we brought Diane's from Los Angeles. Raul Midan.
Now I don't drive, but if I did, I'd be a race car driver. That's right. Like a man, I'm such a man. Oh,
no. We had local performers, and it was really a wonderful event. We had 2 stages planned for outdoors with a dozen groups performing all day. However, the weather did not comply, and so those stages had to be moved to an indoor venue. Still, all the performances happened and they were great. It's just they couldn't be outside. You know, that's something you have to contend with.
Yeah. What are the odds in Miami Beach, though?
You never know. I
Even
think
in
this is
December.
December. So next year we have scheduled the Jazz Festival for January 2018, January 5th, 6th, and 7th. The website for the event is sobejazz.com. That's spelled SOBEJAZZ.com.
Before we move on, are you willing, David, to share the hopes that you shared with me the other day about securing Stevie Wonder?
Right. My dream is to have Stevie Wonder perform at the South Beach Jazz Festival. I know that he is much in demand, and of course it would bring great attention to my mission. And I know that he feels very strongly about accessibility. He said so in public, at awards events.
You can't read it, you can't read Braille. Before saying the winner, we need to make every single thing accessible to every single person with a disability.
That making things accessible is paramount. You know, I was hoping some way that I could connect with him on that level and that we could work together.
Well, fortunately, David, Stevie is a big listener of Blind Abilities. You have his
Really?
ear as we speak, yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
A dream, I think, but
Right.
you are the sunshine of my life.
one can dream, right?
Yes, of course. And I've reached out to his agent, and, you know, I'm looking forward to continue a conversation about working together for this goal of accessibility. I was wearing my Ira glasses, which I know that you've talked about in the past.
Sure.
I'm very excited about that technology. I use so much technology in my day-to-day life. For example, when I was talking about design in my whole home is wired and wireless. I use different devices and apps for my phone, as well as components in a rack system, which enable me to control everything in my home, from my sprinklers in my garden to the lighting and the thermostat and the audio video throughout the house. You know, I'm really always trying to push the envelope on those things and try the next best thing. Of course, there are technical glitches all the time, and it's educated me about how things work largely, but also shown me how inaccessible so many things are, and how I have to educate so many people about what it means to be accessible.
Now, David, all this stuff that you're doing, I mean, wow. What technology are you using on a daily basis? Like, what calendar app? How do you keep your appointments? How do you keep your assignments that you got to do? And what's your go-to everyday tools?
Well, I use an iPhone. I have the 7. Of course, that is the most essential tool. Everything kind of works off of that. I use Outlook, I use JAWS, and I use Mac products. All of my computers are Mac. I run Windows with Boot Camp on my Mac devices as well. I have iPhones and iPads and my Apple Watch. I use Amazon Echo What time is it?
The time is 10:52 a.m.
I had to ask it something because I said its name.
We both have the whole Apple orchard.
Yes, exactly. I use the Amazon device for so many different things now. It's integrated into my phone and my calendar. It's so much easier than even picking up my phone and telling Siri to add something into my calendar. I just tell my Amazon device, add it to my calendar, and it's completely seamless. And it shows up, on my phone.
Do you also control your home devices or your home technology through the Echo?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I use Wemo.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I have Wemo for my sprinkler system outside, and I have a fountain in my garden, and they're all connected. I just say fountain on or sprinklers on or that sort of thing. It's great. There's a learning curve to it. But the thing is, if you take one thing at a time and you really immerse yourself in it and you get comfortable with it, then you move on to the next thing. You connect it to the next thing and the next thing, and you have these huge resources available to you, this network. Sometimes you feel like you're living in this alternate universe, I have to admit. Sometimes I'm connected to my devices so much that I forget, to be out in the world and smell the air and listen to the birds and that sort of thing. Because I'm constantly listening to podcasts when I'm not sitting at a computer or something.
Well, you get those binaural microphones, you'll be out in the world then.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to exploring that technology.
I agree with you. With the Wemo stuff, I got one piece at a time and started connecting them up. And I was thinking, is this overkill? But you know what? It's convenience. It's the luxury of being able to just do something at will.
Yes. Absolutely. First of all, look, this is the first time in human history where people with disabilities are on a level playing field like no other time. It kind of boggles the mind to think that, we can now do things. I mean, just a few decades ago, people who were blind were so marginalized and were so sheltered and were not encouraged to do anything really meaningful with their lives. Having lost my sight at the age of 30 in 2000, if you're going to lose your sight, it was really the best time to do it because of the technology that's available.
It's also because there's people like you out there advocating and doing stuff, making changes. It may not be evident right away, but it trickles down like we were talking about the domino effect. Things are changing, and when people hear this on the big national level, like you're aiming for and have done, it makes a difference for everybody. You're helping level the playing field.
I'm really trying to do that. Every new person that I meet sort of opens up a new world to what's possible, and I try to do that for others. That brings me back again to my organization, Access Now, which is an ADA advocacy organization. We try to encourage businesses, entities, and individuals to become compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, where they are not doing so. Sometimes we use structured negotiations with our attorneys to encourage them, if you will, and we've had great success. I took over this organization from a woman named Phyllis Resnick in 2011. She started the organization with her husband, who used a wheelchair here in Miami Beach, and found that City Hall was not accessible for people with disabilities. And they really fought hard to make some powerful changes. In fact, they made national changes. I just picked that up and ran with it. Where I have my strengths in technology, we've had actually many cases in which we've created accessibility internationally. It's a remarkable feeling when you can do something when you're working with Fortune 500 companies and top tech companies that actually have global impact, and with Ivy League universities where their programs and their courses are now accessible to people who are blind where they were not before. Done a lot of work with point of sale devices in retail locations in dozens of cases where we've encouraged large international retail chains to make their point of sale devices accessible. And it's interesting because you do those things and you don't necessarily get feedback from people in their day-to-day that go to purchase something and it's accessible. It's just easy. You just do it. You don't think somebody actually had to champion this to make sure that it was that way. I am proud to have championed those things for myself and for others.
Wonderful stuff.
Our lawyer works very closely with the Department of Justice. He's really on top of web accessibility and what's coming up. and what kind of initiatives are being pushed. One of our cases actually against Lucky Jeans was picked up by the Department of Justice, and they made an example of them regarding the point of sale devices. It really had a snowball effect because they gave us pushback, but eventually they complied, and then many other national retail chains were compliant as well. And they used it as a marketing tool because they said, here we are being accessible for people who are blind. And that's great. We encourage that. It's great to make things accessible, and please let people know about it.
Kind of creates that domino effect when someone in the market makes a change and everyone else starts to follow suit.
I started an affiliate of the American Council of the Blind here and the Florida Council of the Blind, which is in Miami Beach, called the Miami Beach Council of the Blind, and have organized a wonderful group of very active individuals who are blind and who are very tech savvy and interested in really being involved in their community. They're not shrinking violets. They really go for it. We've done all kinds of things like bowling and yoga, and we just had a brunch at the Perez Art Museum with Guided Touch Tour, and really want to be out in the world and experience all that there is to experience.
How can someone in the Miami Beach area become a member or become involved with your chapter?
Okay, well, you can call me.
Okay.
We have a Facebook page. It's Miami Beach CB, facebook.com/Miami Beach CB. Also, my email address is david@sobijazz.com, and you can reach me that way. Or you can call me, and my number is 561-703-9716. I'm happy to put that out there. I encourage people to call me if they have any questions.
And are you looking for volunteers and folks to help out with your Jazz Festival next year and also with your Power Access and Access Now organizations?
Oh, sure. We're always looking for volunteers, and we work with many different volunteer organizations. And there's a place for everyone. Sometimes people think, well, I can do this or that or the other thing. But you know what? I ask people what it is that they want to do and what their strengths are, and we find a place for them, and their help is wanted and needed and appreciated greatly. For Access Now, we really need members nationally so that when we have cases to enforce the ADA, we can call on members in different states because the laws are different in each state. The website for Access Now is ADAaccessnow.org. And you don't have to do anything except give us your name and your contact information and perhaps your disability if you want to disclose that. There's a form on the website which you can send to us. It's easy, and it really makes a huge difference.
David, we ask this of all of our guests. What advice would you give to a young person or even a senior who's recently lost their vision and is feeling down in the dumps? What words of wisdom would you offer to that person?
The first thing I would say is call me. Call me. Because when I lost my sight and I'm sitting there with the doctor in front of me and he says, "I'm sorry, David, but you're blind." And he handed me a pamphlet. I don't know if it said what to do when you go blind or what it said. I had no idea. It wasn't accessible. It was just a very sorry list of resources. I really learned everything by reaching out and kind of screaming out. Somebody tell me what's available. It was a very organic process, and it made me become an advocate. That's why I say call me, because if you really don't know where to go first and you tell me what you want to accomplish and what your obstacles are, I can tell you where to begin. I can give you resources in your area. I can tell you what's worked for me and for so many others. And I can be a live person who is empathetic and will really stand by you and walk with you in that journey. It's such a pleasure to be able to do that when people find that independence.
I want to say impressed, but I'm excited that there's someone like you out there, David, that takes on this stuff, does this stuff, and makes yourself available. That's a great thing. All you do and all that stuff, you're making yourself aware. So you start making connections and networking. That's what it's all about. So great job.
And that's what led me to you guys. I'm so glad to know you and looking forward to developing our relationship and learning more from each other.
I saw on your website, I believe it was Power Access, the mission, and it starts off with to exhibit the ability of people with disabilities. And it's about our ability, not our disability, which is so much in keeping with our Blind Abilities mission. Mm-hmm. So bravo to you, man. Good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
We've been speaking with David New. David is so many things. He's an advocate, and this time I'll say with emphasis, an activist for the blind and visually impaired and for people with all kinds of disabilities. He's in South Beach in Miami Beach, Florida. He is the president of two wonderful organizations, Power Access and Access Now, and he previously gave us those website addresses and his contact information.
And David, we'll put all your links in the show notes.
David, we want to thank you again for coming on with us here on Blind Abilities. As Jeff said, not just impressed, but overwhelmed with your impact on the blindness community. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations and the reality of blind abilities.
The realities of blind abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, blindabilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.